Welcome to part 6 of our problem solving lesson, and here we have a raw file that has a variety of problems. We exposed for the sky to try and capture this lovely sunset, but that's plunged our building into silhouette, so we're losing some of the interesting architectural detail from the castle. So what I'm going to do is try and adjust the sliders here to bring out some of the missing detail without blowing out my sky. And these sliders in the basic tab will get us part of the way there, but we will then need to make selective adjustments using the new adjustment brush, which you'll find in the CS4 or CS5 raw editor. Now we could try using the exposure slider to brighten up this area here, but that's going to blow out the highlights in the sky even more, creating a washed out sky, rubbish colors, and really clipped highlights. So you're actually going to end up with areas that won't print out with any detail at all, and you still can't see much of the building. So let's press 0 to take that back down to its default, and we'll use fill light to target these shadows and try and bring out some of the detail without blowing out the highlights too much. So if we drag fill light to the right, that's revealing some of the detail, but we're starting to wash out the colors as well if we go too far, so it's a bit of a compromise. If I take it to around about 30, then we're not messing around too much with the colors in the sky, but we are revealing some detail here. So this slider is helping us make a selective adjustment, but it is also changing the sky a little bit too. We can try and restore some of the missing clipped highlights by dragging recovery to the right, and that enables us to make a selective adjustment as well by targeting these problem areas and not messing around too much with the rest of the shot's tones. But if I truly want to make selective adjustments, just target the specific tones of the castle without messing with the sky, I can use this tool up here, which is the adjustment brush. You'll find this in CS4 or 5, and it actually lets you basically dodge and burn but stay in the comfort zone and the quality zone of the camera raw editor. And that is a really powerful way of adjusting your images. And because you're editing raw, then all the changes we make by clicking here and setting all these sliders to different settings, they will all be stored with the raw file, so you can come and tweak them later whenever you fancy. So let's kick off by making a new adjustment. Let's brighten up the exposure so we can lighten up the castle. Around about 1. No, let's go a little bit higher. 1.5 stops should do the trick. Let's just type in a value if you want to be precise. And then what we can do is click and spray over part of the image to make a selective adjustment. But you can see my brush tip first of all. The size is 4. Let me just increase that to something a little bit bigger. Maybe around about 10 should do the trick. The circle in the middle is the tip. The circle around the outside is the feather, and it's always good to have a nice soft feathered edge for a more subtle adjustment. I can now click and spray and make exposure adjustments with a soft tipped brush and lighten up the building. That's almost like enhancing the initial floodlights that are in the location to bring out some of the missing detail and texture. And once I've clicked and sprayed, I've dropped a pin. If you move over the pin, you can see a mask to show you which areas are being adjusted. I can go to a smaller size now and use the same settings and just click and spray to lighten up some of these areas here. Maybe go for a larger bit for this section here. Here we go. And lighten up the trees as well to reveal some tree detail. And the cool thing is, once you've placed a pin, you can see the areas that we're changing there now. You can actually then tweak the exposure and take it down again, make it less subtle or more subtle. You can try adjusting the contrast, bring out some more detail, and even pop up the brightness a wee bit as well. And you're fine-tuning this pin's controls to change all of these properties with ease. Now the cool thing about editing in RAW is you can make changes very easily. If I just check the mask to see our strokes, it looks a little bit too sharp and hard-edged in the middle here, so I'm going to just Control+ to zoom in a little bit, and you can actually erase areas from the adjustment just by clicking and spraying if they're not working out too well, like so. I could always then add them again by clicking here. Let's just get the pin up by clicking on the pin. Yeah, there it is. And I can make sure I've got a nice strong feather, and we'll make a less of a hard-edged change there. I'm holding the spacebar down to actually spray our softer strokes, like so. So that's helped modify that area. Let me just click and look at the mask again. Yeah, that's a much softer and more subtle change than when we had our hard-edged brush tip earlier on. And there we've changed exposure, brightness and contrast, but we can also add a new brush by clicking here. We can then change these properties to 0 by typing in 0 into the fields, and we can then pop saturation up to something like 53 and then place a new brush with a much larger size and feather, maybe at the top here, just to create a more vivid and vibrant looking sky at the top. And also we'll do the same with the reflection down the bottom as well. So subtle color changes and subtle exposure changes are quite possible, and all of these things can be added to or subtracted from or changed at any time by clicking on the relevant pin and adjusting the slider. So we can even boost the exposure a wee bit more just to reveal a bit more of the texture and detail in our building. So that is the adjustment brush. It's very powerful indeed. You've got masks as well. To get rid of a pin that you don't want, just click on it and press the backspace, and that gets rid of it, and you can start from scratch with a new pin. And by making selective adjustments in the Camera Raw editor, you're preserving all the detail of the tone and the color that are in the raw file, and you'll lose some of that detail when you go into the standard Photoshop editor. So this is yet another reason really to upgrade to Photoshop CS4 or 5, especially if you shoot in RAW and you want the quality and the control that the new Camera Raw editor's adjustment brush will give you. And as a finishing touch, we couldn't quite clobber the clipping here using the recovery slider, but if I create a new brush tip and set it at a smaller size and take the exposure down to about minus 0.60 maybe, I can click and spray, and that reduces the clipped highlights there and just makes a subtle but important enhancement to the colors and the tones of the sunset. I can even take that down a wee bit more to try and get rid of the clipped area. Something like minus 0.80 should do the trick.